From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Coming up today, K-State's A.J. Tarpoff discusses health management of newborn calves. He talks about colostrum intake, when a producer should intervene if that's not happening, and about administering liquid therapy against calf scours. Then K-State's Darren Busick will look ahead to the 2018 Kansas Cattle Drive, taking place in mid-February in Buhler, co-sponsored by K-State. He tells how you seedstock producers can still sign up to showcase your breeding stock at this event, and he goes over the extensive informational program that's been lined up, including presentations by Temple Grandin. And on this week's K-State Horticulture segment, Ward Upham on grass competition with landscape trees. All that here on Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
You cow-calf producers who have a spring calving herd, well, it's crunch time, or nearing so for you, as we're into the spring calving season for some and soon will be for others. We have invited by, once again, Research and Extension beef veterinarian at K-State, A.J. Tarpoff, to talk about some calving time management that we don't want to overlook as we go through this all-important point in the cow herd production season. A.J., it begins with assuring that calf, once on the ground, is intaking colostrum at an appropriate level.
Colostrum, I like to refer to colostrum as the mother's birthday gift to that calf. Okay, these calves are born with a fully functional immune system, but they are naive to the world. Okay, they've never been exposed to anything. They've been inside the uterus. All of a sudden, they get born into the environment. They have no host defense. How do they protect themselves? That's where mom comes in. Okay, the cow's first milk, the colostrum, it is packed with preformed antibodies and immune cells and energy through fat. Proper intake, we do need to have, within the first 24 hours, we need to have some critical intake of that colostrum, or that calf won't have the protection from those pre-made antibodies.
So you have to assure that calf is up and nursing promptly. At what point does one come to the conclusion that there is an issue here, though?
Okay, well, keep in mind that the gut is permeable whenever that calf is born. Okay, it allows these big antibodies to get transported across the gut wall and be active in the bloodstream. Okay, but we've got a time frame we got to meet. Within about 9 hours, we've got 50% closure of that gut wall. That means those antibodies aren't passing through, aren't getting into the bloodstream like they were soon after birth. Within the first 2 to 4 hours, that's kind of our most critical time. If we can get colostrum in, we get very, very good passive transfer into the bloodstream. But by 24 hours, keep in mind, 24 hours, we basically have complete gut closure, and they are not absorbing those antibodies into the bloodstream like they were when they were younger. So adequate intake soon after birth is critically, critically important.
And if that's not happening, then that's the signal that one should think about supplementing colostrum?
Supplementing colostrum, there's a number of different products, and we don't have to talk about all those products, but one thing that I will point out, whether it's from an animal in your own herd, whether it's a commercialized product, those are your safest bets. If you can harvest the colostrum from an animal within your herd to be able to give to that calf, perfect. Then how do we get it in? Okay, well, think about how that calf can eat. Can it take a bottle? Okay, that is the most natural means, and it closes off the esophageal groove, and that colostrum goes straight into the abomasum like it should. There are some calves that they're so weak they don't have a suckle reflex. We've had a really hard pull, okay? The calf itself is covered in that yellow mucousy material called meconium. Those are all factors that really ding in my head that we have a high-risk calf that we may need to supplement and step in and kind of interfere to make sure that calf receives colostrum. If you're used to using calf tubes or calf feeders, take an inventory. Are they clean? Are they reusable? Are they torn up from the year prior? Do you need to go purchase a new one? Okay, make sure all those supplies are ready to go, whether you've just started calving and you haven't really thought about, dealing with that because you haven't had to use it yet, or you're coming in, just being prepared and having some of those supplies on hand and ready to go will get you kind of the best benefit coming into the calving season.
And whatever means necessary, assure that colostrum intake. That is absolutely essential to calf survival. Now, when we think of diseases in newborn calves, the first one that rises to the surface, of course, is calf scours disease. And one wants to, as much as one possibly can, take all preventative measures against this.
Absolutely. Prevention is the key, okay? Before I get into prevention, I think we need to talk about what the bugs that cause these scour issues, okay?
That makes a difference, doesn't it?
And it does. So keep in mind that we have bacteria, things like E. coli, things like salmonella. We also have viruses like rota and coronavirus. And then we also have protozoa like crypto. Okay, so all of these bugs can all account for calf scours. But it does depend on time on when they're actually showing scours. Okay, within the first, day to about a week, 5-7 days, the time frame can kind of tell us what bug we're dealing with. Very early after birth, we're typically dealing with more of a bacterial E. coli type scours. Now, between a week and about 3 weeks, that's kind of the critical period that we may run into crypto issues and rota and coronavirus. Okay, so understanding how these pathogens work and what we're dealing with may help us with our treatment regimen whenever we're trying to either prevent or isolate some of these issues.
So there may be a different treatment response given the bug at work.
Correct. But mainstay, what is wrong with calf scours? Why does it affect the animal so much? Dehydration. Dehydration, that's what makes them weak, that's what makes them go down, and we can ultimately lose them if they get too dehydrated. So fluid therapy is absolutely essential when it comes to dealing with calf scours.
That would include electrolytes and such, right?
So electrolytes, real quick, how do we determine on calf electrolytes or if we need further treatment from your veterinarian? Oral electrolytes, they're great to be able to get those fluids back into that animal, get them what they need. Okay, but how do we determine whether oral electrolytes are going to be enough for this calf? Okay, well, we need to figure out, number one, are they still nursing? What's their mentation? Are they severely depressed and they're down on the ground and they're not responsive? Okay, we need immediate therapy from your veterinarian through IV fluids. Okay, if we can keep fluids into that calf, if the calf is already nursing, it has access to free water, it just has loose manure. Okay, oral electrolytes can usually get us by and get us over that hump during this critical period of time. But if they are not nursing, if they have a cold, dry mouth, they are very depressed. They are not moving around like they should. Okay, that all tells me that animal's dehydration is much higher than what it should be. So guess what? We need to intervene. We need to intervene medically through IV fluids. Okay, and this is where your veterinarian comes into play, that we can put these essential nutrients directly into the bloodstream so we can save quite a few of these animals. But time is critical. Don't wait too long before you call your veterinarian if that animal is already very depressed.
However, not putting the cart before the horse, the preference here, AJ, is to keep scours at a minimum, or if we can possibly prevent scours outbreaks in total, that would be the way to go here, and that's about cleanliness and biosecurity, you point out.
Cleanliness and biosecurity. The first point on biosecurity, how can we introduce disease? If we introduce new animals, right? Mm-hmm. So some of us get a little bit complacent on our biosecurity practices. Maybe we've made big genetic selections. We've got a very good cow, and we're about to get a good high-dollar calf out of it. It loses a calf. But we still have that high-dollar cow. What do we do with her? Well, we need to resist the urge to go down and either purchase from a neighbor or go to a sale barn and purchase a different calf to plant onto her so she can milk out her regular lactation. The issue with that is that calf, although it's very young and it appears healthy, that calf can be a disease amplifier. Mm-hmm. We don't know what it's been exposed to, and whatever it has been exposed to, those are different bugs than what our home herd has been exposed to. So introduction of just one outside calf, it can actually lead to a big scours outbreak within our herds. So keep in mind biosecurity. If you do have to bring in a calf like that to help milk out a cow, isolation, quarantine of that cow and that calf from the rest of your herd until your youngest calf is about a month of age. That's kind of a critical time. So separation and isolation, those are critical biosecurity things that we can implement on our operation.
An important consideration. Back to calving in as pristine an environment as is at all possible. That's the aim here. We've talked about various things over the years. The Sandhills calving system, it's still very much recommended, isn't it, as one possibility?
It is. If we can calve in a clean environment, that is absolutely key. I already mentioned calves. Older calves are disease amplifiers. While they may not be showing signs of disease, they take pathogens from the environment, they replicate rapidly, and they shed it exponentially all through the environment. So how do we break the cycle? How do we reduce the risk of calf scours? Okay, well, the basics of Sandhills calving system, we break that cycle twofold. Number one, we start calving all in the same paddock, environment, pasture, you name it. One location, we have all our cows in there. We calve them out for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then after that period of time, all the cow-calf pairs stay right where they are. Anything that is still pregnant, we move to the next location, okay, and we calve for another 2 to 3 weeks, and so on and so forth until all the calves are born. Once the youngest calf is about a month of age, we can put them all back together and manage them as one group. If your facilities aren't set up to do a true Sandhills calving, use those key topics to try to implement those on your own operation. Okay, how can we separate calf by age group? If we can separate the calf by age by every 2 to 3 weeks, we can break that amplification cycle. Okay, and then clean environment. Where do our cows congregate?
Feeding areas, of course.
Feeding areas, resting areas, watering areas. Okay, so is there some way that we can move some of these areas around the pasture? Okay, the solution to pollution is dilution. If we can dilute that contaminants over a larger area, we can help solve some of these issues.
This is extra effort, of course, but time and research has proven over and over again that the reduction in calf scours outbreaks is extraordinary if one follows these steps.
It is. Going from a 30% morbidity or sickness rates and neonatal health issues to hardly treating any animals for years on end.
AJ, thank you for coming over. Appreciate the word on this, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Again, several things that you cow-calf operators need to keep well in mind and at the forefront of your calving time management as we're rolling into the spring calving season in earnest now around Kansas. A.J. Tarpoff is a beef veterinarian with K-State Research and Extension. He's been featured on this part of Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. On this segment, we will profile an event that's really in its early going. It's the third such event, but it is a multifaceted gathering for cattle producers in south central Kansas coming up in the middle part of February. The first 2 editions of this met with great success. What we're talking about is the 3rd annual Kansas Cattle Drive. This is co-sponsored by K-State Research and Extension and the Reno County Cattlemen's Association. It'll take place in Buhler, and one of those individuals who's very hard at work putting the finishing touches on this year's Kansas Cattle Drive joins us now via phone from his office in Hutchinson. Darren Busick is the Reno County Extension Agricultural Agent. So, Darren, you were on the ground floor of this idea taking root here a couple of years ago and have seen it through to this point. Discuss the origins of the Kansas Cattle Drive, if you would.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And it's definitely taken off over the last 3 years, that's for sure. And, 3 years ago, Reno County Cattlemen's Association, we were having a meeting and we were just brainstorming on things we could do. And somebody kind of threw an idea out and similar to this, and then we've kind of just let it grow into what it is. And what we do is on Main Street in Buhler, we put about 6 inches of sand down and use portable corral systems. And then seedstock producers from all over the state have come the last 2 years and can show off their bulls or their heifers and then also promote bull sales if they have a bull sale. But one thing that it does is put producers next to each other that, might have a really large sale and well known, and it might get a younger guy that doesn't have a sale yet but has 15 to 20 bulls that he sells a year, and puts them side by side, and lets producers see them side by side and talk to both of them in the same place.
How many seed stock producers can you accommodate then with the on-site displays?
Well, the last 2 years it's doubled every year, and I don't think it's going to let us down this year either. I think we're going to double in size again. The first year we had 17 pens. Last year we had 30, roughly about 29 or 30 pens. This year I'm hoping to hit 40, 45, somewhere in there. We can take more than that. I've been taking calls actually from people saying, hey, we live in Harvey County, or we live, a county or two away, and you can use our corral system if you need it, and stuff like that. So it's really coming together nice. People are jumping on board, willing to help.
And you have producers flocking into this now, not just from that immediate south central Kansas area, but from all across the state and beyond. And that invitation is out, right?
Yes, yeah, correct. We still have room. We'll still take people. My goal was 50 ranches this year. I don't know that we'll hit that, but that's kind of what my goal was. And we actually have ranches interested that have contacted me from Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri to come down to it. And it sounds like the Missouri ranch, I believe, will be there. The Iowa ranch, I think, will be there. Nebraska, I'm not quite sure on yet, but they're coming from all over. Last year, during the trade show and all of our different areas that we have there, we had 7 states represented last year. So, yeah, I hope to continue to grow that also.
That signifies the interest in this aspect of the day. And how does a seed stock producer, before we go any further, become involved? What procedure do they need to follow?
Yeah, well, first off, they can find us on Facebook just to watch videos or watch different, find different information out on Facebook. And it is at Kansas Cattle Drive. Or they can email me. My email is Darren, D-A-R-R-E-N, Busick, B-U-S-I-C-K, at ksu.edu.
We'll repeat those contacts as we go along here. But this is just one of the many things going on Saturday, February the 17th, as part of the 3rd Annual Kansas Cattle Drive. 2 keynote speakers. Let's highlight those, both of which are well known, one of which is internationally known. You were able to corral, if you will, Temple Grandin to be part of this program. Very proud of that, Darren, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. When we started this 3 years ago, she was kind of my end goal. So, we were all joking about, well, we need to come up with some loftier goals or get more goals now built up because we're it just grew faster than we expected. And, yeah, we were lucky enough to get Dr. Grandin this year. She's going to be speaking twice throughout the day, and she'll actually be speaking at 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and that's going to be livestock handling. She's going to talk about the low-stress handling and the ways that she promotes and talks about with livestock handling. And then later in the day, she'll kind of wrap up the cattle drive at 3:30 to 4:30 with a different minds talk, kind of the spectrum of autism, and that's one thing she's really well known for also is autism, so she'll be talking about that. One thing that she's really done for us is she has just opened up the doors. The floodgates were opened up as soon as we started announcing Dr. Grandin coming. The cattle drive we're promoting it to ranchers, of course, but we're also promoting it to the mom and dad that feed their kids the hamburgers that are consumers, and so she's really opened that up. We're going to have a lot of people there that she'll bring in that are not ranch oriented.
So Temple Grandin prominently featured on the program, 2 presentations during the course of the Kansas Cattle Drive. Exciting in that respect. You also have a native Kansan coming back. He is out of Oklahoma State University, an animal scientist there for a number of years, Clint Rusk, and he will be part of the program.
Yeah, Dr. Rusk and I, we've kind of formed a relationship over the last couple of years and gotten to know each other. He's actually come and judged our Reno County 4-H fair, and he's a guy. His credentials and everything. He doesn't need to do those county fairs, and it just shows the love he has for the kids and the respect he has for them, and wants to continuing to pour into kids and 4-Hers and stuff like that and FFAers. So I was lucky enough to get him on the docket also, and he's going to come back and just talk a lot about an animal eval or how to look at a bull and know what you're looking for and why you're looking for that. And so I'm excited to hear him speak on that also.
Excellent presentation in the offing there as well, Dr. Clint Rusk out of Oklahoma State. There are other things going on within the program as well, mentioning at least a couple of more here. There will be a workshop on beef quality assurance, and veterinarians out of K-State will be presenting that and helping producers work toward that end.
Yeah, with this year we partnered with the Kansas Beef Council, and we're having our beef quality assurance meeting, and we're going to have a lunch. That's something where you need to register through me. You can send an email or through the Kansas Beef Council, and it's going to be noon to 2. So we actually have the lunch provided. In fact, the 4-H kids, they're going to be having one of the concession stands there, and so they'll be providing the lunch. It's actually the Reno County Livestock Judging team that will be doing it. They'll be providing the lunch, and then we'll have speakers, and you'll get BQA certified, so that'll be a really good meeting to attend.
So if you need to become BQA certified, this is an excellent opportunity to get that taken care of within the context of the Kansas Cattle Drive. There'll also be a panel discussion on, as you've termed it, branding your ranch. Darren, what's that getting at?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about this one. We have a Reno County, one of our own, but she's getting really well known, in the spectrum of advocating and going out and promoting your farm and having people out on your farm and stuff. And it's Jenny Burgess. She's getting to be a well-known writer, writes blogs and writes several articles and things for different magazines and publications. And so she'll be there. We will have Farmer Derek, which is Derek Klingenberg. I believe he's in the Peabody area. And then Debbie Lyons-Blythe. She was actually here last year at the Cattle Drive, and those three are just going to share what they do. They're going to talk about YouTube. They're going to talk about blogs. They're going to talk about getting in front of people to talk about agriculture and educating people on what we actually do. And so they're going to share stories, but it's also something to come with questions and talk, and it's going to be kind of a live panel or a roundtable discussion. So bring your questions and feel free to come listen to them and talk to them. That's something that I'm really looking forward to, and at 11 o'clock to noon, so right before lunch. So you can come listen to them speak and do the roundtable discussion, and then come eat at some of the concession stands that we'll have set up that day.
Very good. And there's still more. A stock dog demonstration, a chuck wagon cooking class is planned. This is just overflowing with activities. That's not to mention the commercial exhibits that will be on display there as well, Darren.
Yeah, no, that's all part of it too. We're going to have several demonstration arenas this year where you can see the corral systems being used and actually get in and move cattle through them and shut the pens and see how sturdy the pens are and decide which brand you really like of those corral systems. And so we'll have at least 4 or 5 of those set up and different brands, and then we'll have a large commercial exhibit.
This program is loaded. As you noted, it is for cattle producers. It is for the public at large likewise. There's something for everybody at the Kansas Cattle Drive this year. In as far as attending, there really is no need for pre-registration, Darren. It's basically just show up and take it in? Yep,
that's right. Just show up. The only thing that really needs registered is for the BQA or the chuck wagon cooking class. Either of those would need to be pre-registered, but other than that, just show up and have fun. And another thing we haven't even mentioned is the FFA Fun Zone. We're going to have that back. That's just a place where kids can play for probably hours. Yeah, we'll have all kinds of things for all ages.
This is coming up on Saturday, February the 17th. They're in downtown Buhler, very easy to get to, just to the north and east of Hutchinson in Reno County. Darren, congratulations on putting together what is just a fine lineup here, and looking forward to seeing you down in Buhler on the 17th of February. Thank you very much for the preview.
Yes, thank you.
Darren Busick with us, the Reno County Extension Agricultural Agent, one of those instrumental in organizing the 3rd Annual Kansas Cattle Drive. K-State Research and Extension is a co-sponsor, along with the Reno County Cattlemen's Association. You can find out more by contacting Darren via email directly at darrenbusick@ksu.edu. DARRENBUSICK@ksu.edu. Or you can follow everything having to do with the Cattle Drive on Facebook, simply at Kansas Cattle Drive. Hope to see you in Buhler on the 17th of February. And we'll be back with more on this Agriculture Today.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128-plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local Extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
You're listening to Agriculture Today, coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University. Eric Atkinson here. Now, today's agricultural news headlines for you, these courtesy in part of DTN. USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue has laid out a 4-page set of principles for the new Farm Bill. This was issued yesterday. The summary of the principles, largely broad in scope, and would leave much of the nuts and bolts of the Farm Bill up to Congress. The USDA says the Secretary wants a fiscally responsible Farm Bill that reflects the Trump administration's budget goals. The USDA also wants to reduce the regulatory burdens on USDA customers as well, he says. In the statement, Perdue said the principles come after traveling to more than 30 states to hear from people in agriculture. The Secretary's Farm Bill principles come before the administration details its next budget proposal that will set administration financial priorities. Last year's budget proposal, you'll recall, which came before Perdue was confirmed at USDA, recommended major cuts to the department's discretionary programs and programs such as crop insurance. The USDA's Farm Bill concepts now are calling for a farm safety net that helps American farmers weather times of economic stress without distorting markets or increasing shallow loss payments, in the language of the statement. That would suggest the USDA does not want to see any changes to price loss coverage reference prices or to the agricultural risk coverage program, the shallow loss program that would increase payments to producers. The policy also states the USDA wants to promote more innovative crop insurance products and changes for producers as well to help manage risk. The principles document does not specify any need to reduce crop insurance. Now, other elements under farm production and conservation in this statement, they would like to encourage young, beginning, and underrepresented farmers with increased access to land and capital. Conservation, they say, should balance farm productivity so the most fertile and productive lands remain in production, while land retired for conservation purposes favor more environmentally sensitive acres, they say. Conservation practices, they add, should also focus on improved soil health, water, and air quality. And regarding trade, the USDA is now calling for improving U.S. competitiveness by expanding investments while also adding more accountability to export promotion programs. Farm organizations have called for doubling funding for the Market Access Program and the Foreign Market Development Program. Now, this a year after the U.S. pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Agriculture Secretary says that the country can get better deals by negotiating separately with each of the TPP nations. More on that from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
Great thing for the American worker, what we just did.
President Trump, 1 year ago this week, pulling the U.S. out of the 12-nation Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's taken a year for the remaining 11 countries to recover and push on for TPP 11, which those nations reportedly are set to sign in March. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania Wednesday, Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said farmers and ag business people were understandably concerned that the U.S. would not be part of this very large trade agreement, but that he agrees with the president.
I think the United States can do a better job bilaterally.
And indeed, Perdue told reporters once those 11 TPP nations signed their agreement,
we then think we will be able to go to those countries on a bilateral basis and be involved in better trade deals, negotiate better trade deals.
He said because U.S. farm and food products enjoy such a good reputation and are highly desired by many nations,
the world cannot deny them for very long.
Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Closer to home, a national publication produced by students for students has recently placed the Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine in the upper half of a list of the top 10 veterinary colleges in the U.S. Citing what it calls a can-do attitude toward solving problems, College Magazine lists several factors supporting its number 4 ranking for K-State among U.S. veterinary colleges, including a high standard of excellence in patient care and scientific discovery in the area of infectious diseases. Further emphasis was placed on the university's large animal expertise, the impact on the cattle industry, learning objectives, student proficiency, and the ability to identify and treat diseases. It's specifically named the College of Vet Med Center of Excellence for Emerging and Zoonotic Animal Diseases, the Rabies Laboratory, and the Center for Epithelial Research as standouts in the program. So congratulations to K-State's College of Veterinary Medicine for that recognition. On now to the Kansas soybean update for this week. Here's Greg Akagi.
Teresa Brandenburg is joining us. She is from Osborne, serves as second vice president of the Kansas Soybean Association, and also serves as the chair of the Kansas Soybean Expo Committee. And Teresa, you finally get to breathe. The 2018 Kansas Soybean Expo's in the books.
In the books, and now we can start planning for next year.
But a great expo nonetheless.
Yeah, we had a great crowd today. We always appreciate the producers that take time away from their farm to come out here. And honestly, we got some great information about exports and markets this morning from some of our commission partners. John Jenkinson joined us for lunch, and we had a great luncheon and an association business meeting. This afternoon, we heard from K-State researchers on things that are really vital to producers, increasing yields, talking about dicamba, and then also talking about stem borers. And we had a little bit of excitement in the yield contest this year. This year, we actually had our first documented 100-bushel yield winner. So that producer actually got an extra $1,000 for being the first person in that club.
So much of that has to do with technology research and so many things that go into it, which I know is so important to look at, but to hear updates on throughout, not only here at the Expo, but throughout the year, too.
Well, that's one of the great things about Kansas Soybean is we have a strong checkoff that's funding research to help producers get better. And then we have a really strong association who's working in Topeka and who's working in Washington, D.C. to make way for those policies so farmers can be productive and can do the work of growing crops. And so we are really proud of the work that's being done by Kansas Soybeans.
You'll have to up that 100-bushel goal then.
I know. We can't wait to see what's going to happen next year.
The good part, too, is seeing the effort and the involvement by your members in wanting to be a part and getting engaged in Kansas Soybean Association or Kansas Soybean Commission activities.
It takes so many people, and we've got a very diverse board. We love hearing from our farmer members. We really want you as a soybean farmer to let us know what's important to your farm. We're working and we're coming here and we're volunteering because we love what we're doing, but we also want to make it easier for every single soybean producer to do their job.
And as you mentioned, you're already working on 2019.
Yeah, we're ready to start again. So we look forward to seeing everybody next year in Topeka.
That is Teresa Brandenburg. She is from Osborne, serves as second vice president of the Kansas Soybean Association, and also serves as the chair of the Kansas Soybean Expo Committee. She joins us on the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission.
Thanks, Greg. And this is Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. Agriculture Today is back now. Time for our weekly horticulture segment here on the broadcast. While we've some idle time during these winter months, might give some thought to our landscape tree management. And we're going to cite a study that was recently completed looking at the importance of what's growing around the base of that tree to that tree's overall health, especially new plantings. Ward Upham is with us now, K-State Research and Extension horticulturist. And no, we're not planting trees now, Ward, but you'd like folks to think ahead a bit about tree establishment in particular here, wouldn't you?
That's right. So when you do plant trees, especially this spring, it's a good idea to know what will get that tree off to a good start. And so in the study, what they looked at were two different types of trees. One was eastern redbud and the other was pecan. And then they looked at 5 different treatments. And so one of those was bare soil. They kept it bare with herbicides, which you can do. But if you do that, just make sure you use some sort of shield to keep that herbicide off the trunk of the tree. Mm-hmm. And use something with glyphosate because it's inactivated when it hits the soil. That was one treatment. Kept it bare out to about 5 feet. And the second treatment was area under the tree was mulched about 3 inches deep. Even if it doesn't help with tree growth, that's still a good idea to keep the weeds down. And then they looked at 3 different turf grasses that were allowed to grow right up to the trunk. One was tall fescue, another was Kentucky bluegrass, both cool season grasses. And then the last was Bermuda grass, which is warm season grass. Well, Bermuda is really competitive, but it is dormant for much of that, spring and fall, and therefore we were wondering if that would really make a difference.
But we know for sure that the cool season grasses are highly competitive with trees, even decent-sized trees, right?
Yeah, now what we expected was probably the tall fescue to be more competitive just because it has a deeper, more robust root system. But you never know until you actually do the testing. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is allowed those trees to grow for 2 years. And then we measured the caliper. That's the diameter of the tree trunk, a certain area, a certain distance above the ground level. And then we looked at top growth. You cut it off at the base and then weigh that whole top portion of the tree. And then the third thing they looked at was leaf area and leaf weight, trying to get an idea of how much photosynthesis was taking place just because of how much leaf area there was.
So a comprehensive notion of tree health and tree growth.
That's right. And so it was interesting what we found. There was no difference between the 2 species of trees, between the pecans and the redbuds. There really wasn't much difference between whether it was mulched or not, which was a little surprising. I thought the mulch would keep that soil cooler, and therefore you get more root growth and you get better growth.
Wetter as well, would it not?
Yeah, it sure would. Now, they did keep these watered. Okay. They were given good care. What the difference was that turf, whether it was allowed to grow all the way up to the trunk or not. And it didn't make any difference, whether it was tall fescue or whether it was Kentucky bluegrass or Bermuda. All of them really hurt the health of that tree.
Even that dormant grass in spring and fall.
Even the Bermuda. Now, it is going to be more competitive during the summer, and so that may have made the difference. But what we looked at, let's look at the results of that. One was caliper. And again, this was just 6 inches above the soil surface. But it was twice as large for plots that didn't have grass than plots that did. So you had a larger, more robust plant. That top growth weight, there was a 300% weight advantage for plots controlled than those without. And for leaf area and leaf weight, 200% larger in plots with grass competition than without. And so it really makes a huge difference whether you control that grass. Now, it doesn't make a lot of difference whether you mulch it or not as far as tree growth. Still, I think it's a good idea to mulch. Mm-hmm. It just makes it easier to keep that area weed-free. But if you do use herbicides, just remember, don't hit the trunk of the tree with that herbicide and use something with glyphosate.
Now, 2 tree species in this study, it's likely that this same principle will apply to other particularly deciduous trees?
Yes, it should. They chose pecan because it has a taproot. It has that type of growth, where the eastern redbud has more of a fibrous root system that spreads out. So they're 2 different types of root growth, but there is no difference in how they reacted.
So this over 2 years, if one is looking to plant this spring, Ward, clearing that site is highly important, even if that tree is not yet established then.
That's right. And it's a good idea once we get into green grass, like into March, even if you're not going to plant until, let's say, April or May, to kill that area. Take your Roundup out there, kill that 5-foot circle out so that when you're ready to plant, you have grass that's already started to decompose.
And as we look ahead, these were relatively young trees. As those trees mature, again, that competition will still likely be formidable enough, do you think?
It's not going to make near as big a difference as it does here, but I think it will make a difference. And so it depends on what you want. If you're willing to put up with a little bit less tree growth, but to have that turf come fairly close under the tree, I think you'll be okay. Where you're going to run into is if you have Bermuda. Bermuda is not tolerant of shade. It'll take about anything else, but it's not tolerant of shade. So you're going to have an area underneath that tree anyway where you're not going to have very much Bermuda. Between Kentucky bluegrass and tall fescue is more shade tolerant. It's not a really good shade grass, but it is more shade tolerant.
The bottom line from this study, though, is that any grass growth around the base of a tree will be competitive, likely to the detriment of the overall performance of that tree, its growth. And so take that in mind. And one last thing before we let you go, it's more about tree health seasonally here, and We've had some moisture around Kansas to take the edge off of our dryness, but we need to be paying attention to those dormant trees nonetheless right now, don't we, in that regard?
That's right, especially if it's a fairly newly planted tree. That really needs to be watered if we get into warm weather like we hopefully will. Look at newly planted trees, they're number one. If it's an evergreen, that's number two. And deciduous trees would be number three. So get as much as you can. Make sure you water it in well. And you want to get it down to about 12 inches. Now, how you decide whether you've reached that point or not, use like a wooden dowel or iron rod. Old fence post, electric fence post works well. You can push it in the ground until it hits dry soil, assuming that soil isn't frozen. So you have to wait until it thaws or that water's just going to run off, of course.
Be sure, if you haven't checked, to check those particularly newly planted trees, for it has up to recently been awfully dry around Kansas, and with the cold temperatures to boot, winter desiccation could have started to take hold. Don't let that ruin your new tree planting. Ward, we appreciate you coming over. Thank you.
You bet.
And that word on starting trees off right with grass control around the base of that tree. That's Ward Upham, K-State Research and Extension horticulturist, with this week's K-State Horticulture segment. That's our time for today. Thanks for tuning in. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.